We have put ourselves at great risk to bring you this information in this documentary, such as a photo of a never-before-seen painting of Ghislaine Maxwell.
Several sources we've contacted throughout our investigation have warned us that speaking out about this story could have dangerous consequences.
We have filed several Freedom of Information Act requests and are waiting to hear back at exactly what is being hidden.
So follow us to stay updated.
The tiny island named Little St. James is now infamous for unimaginable levels of depravity. But what if I told you that this is just the tip of the iceberg? What if I told you that Jeffrey Epstein had another property, shrouded in even more mystery? A mansion in the middle of the desert, where he was above the law. But before we get into that, it's important to get a sense of the amount of wealth and assets that this man had. People mostly only know Epstein for his 2 properties on his private island, but he also had a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, a Colorado ski chalet, an apartment in Paris, and a Manhattan mansion.
How many houses do you have? I don't know. You don't know how many houses you have.
Epstein allegedly bought his New York mansion from his friend and CEO of Victoria's Secret, Leslie Wexner, for, get this, $1. However, no transaction was ever recorded. After Epstein was finally arrested in 2019, his $77 million mansion was raided by the FBI. And after sawing open his safe, they found $70,000 in cash, 48 loose diamonds, a fake Saudi Arabian passport, and a bunch of CDs with writing on them. They also found boxes of hard drives covered in evidence tape. To be clear, before the feds busted in, Epstein's stuff was already covered in evidence tape. Weird, I know. Epstein's island and Florida mansion were also raided. In his Florida pad, they found a fully equipped dentist chair and other odd items like torpedo sex toys. However, most of the assets on the island were seized by the feds and never disclosed to the public. But Epstein had another property, one that has gone largely unnoticed. It sits undisturbed, underreported, and largely unheard of by the public. Why was Epstein's island, Florida mansion, and New York mansion all raided by the FBI quickly after his arrest, but his 33,000 square foot property in New Mexico remains untouched? This is Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch.
On my own island, or on my own ranch, I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do, and I'm free to explore as I see fit.
Albuquerque FBI.
My name's Carter. I'm with Revelo Project. We just had some questions about a high-profile case or investigation that went on in New Mexico.
Okay. You said your name was Carter. What type of case are you trying to get info on? Just so I kind of have an idea of maybe where I can route your info or your call.
Yeah, it's Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch.
To this day, it has yet to be reported that any law enforcement has entered the property or seized any assets. And we wanted to know why.
You said it was Jeffrey Epstein, correct?
Yes, sir.
It soon became clear that the FBI was not interested in providing us any answers.
Okay, well, I have your info here, so I'll forward it along, okay?
All right, appreciate you.
Oh, I have no idea.
You would have to call Edgewood Police Department. You would need to contact Torrance County Sheriff's Office.
Evidence room is not available to take your call.
No, we're not Stanley. Stanley is part of Santa Fe County. This is Torrance County.
This is crazy. No wonder no one caught him. No one's got jurisdiction over that place.
Okay, is there a name associated with that case?
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
Another dead end.
Which was frustrating to say the least. A sentiment we had in common with one of our anonymous contacts.
The FBI didn't even raid Zorro. I mean, they didn't even go there, and they had time to clean it up.
So of course, we tried to force their hand by filing Freedom of Information Act requests. We haven't heard back yet. Follow us to stay updated. The word Zorro is Spanish for fox, a cunning, sly creature who walks the lines between structures of civilized society and the barbaric rules of the wild. An apt description of Epstein. The ranch was his corner of the wilderness, a place where he was the predator and everyone else was the prey. But to Epstein, the ranch was named after the masked vigilante Zorro, whom he apparently had a sexual fetish for, according to one of his former employees. An unsurprising find considering the disturbing emails released in February of 2023. The emails were between Epstein and Jess Staley, a JP Morgan Chase executive, in which they made suggestive references to Disney princesses. This 7,600 acres of land was merely a cattle ranch before Epstein bought it. And when he built a castle-sized mansion on top of it, people started asking questions.
No one really knew what was going on. It was secretive, so everyone I spoke with in that vicinity, I got to know a number of ranch families in that area, and the rumors were that it was a cult, some kind of a cult, because they had seen nothing like this. A lot of local folks that I spoke with told me that they assumed that Epstein was like the owner of Victoria's Secret. They'd see the women, they would see the models. That was the whole vibe.
The ranchers around him thought that a cult had moved in due to the amount of bright lights, massive parties, and the large number of young girls that they would see come and go. The colossal estate, found 35 miles from Santa Fe, went on the market in July this year and piqued our interest. In an effort to gather information on the ranch, with the ultimate goal of touring and filming the property, we contacted the real estate agent.
Hi, Daniel.
Hey, I'm actually with my business partner here, and we are looking to just get your ear on a couple questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
On the land lies a 30,000 square foot house, a 4,400 foot long private grass airstrip, a hangar, and a helipad. Easy access for the rich and powerful. The ranch consists of a mix of privately owned and federally leased land. Over 7,500 acres belong to Epstein, and 423 belong to New Mexico's Bureau of Land Management. There is also a small village within the ranch called Ranch Central, as well as other amenities including a greenhouse, a firehouse, a barn, a 7-bay heated garage, a lodge, a yurt, and an additional guest house.
And the house itself is up on a mesa, but very private. From where you enter, there's almost like a little village. There's a bunch of little houses that you use for staff and stuff as you enter. And then you go up a hill on the mesa to the house. It's extremely impressive. He didn't spare a dime. I mean, he really had great taste.
There are also equestrian facilities, which include an 8-stall barn with a tack room, an arena for equestrian activities, and an exterior gated horse run.
When we did the inspection of the property, we were able to get a pretty good layout. You know, it was very grand and very Spanish style. So it has like the courtyard in the middle and then all the rooms with portals that come out so that you can look into the middle courtroom. It had a very large industrial kitchen, so you knew that he probably entertained. At the time, I was told that a doctor lived at the village on an everyday basis. And then I think he had a cook. He had his airstrip. He had his own pilot. He had a home for his pilot. He had his main residence. Then he had a couple other residents that were on the back side that you don't see from the highway. He also had a mobile home back there and a small cabin. He did create a self-contained community, is what I would call it.
The ranch is self-sustaining, a whole mini society, a world out west, where the laws of the nation are left behind. And if Little St. James resembled that of Pinocchio's Pleasure Island,
I'm collecting stupid little boys,
then his ranch was akin to that of the show Westworld.
These violent delights have violent Let's celebrate.
Despite our best efforts, we couldn't get an in-person tour of Zorro Ranch. The non-disclosure agreement that they wanted us to sign was just one of the many obstacles that we faced in trying to get this done.
To answer very in-depth questions, I need a signed NDA and proof of funds.
Which if we were to have signed, the creation of this video would not have been possible. So we turned our sights on finding sources that could get us insider information. And thankfully, this proved to be a very fruitful endeavor. Some sources we contacted were no help at all. Their responses were dismissive, short, and downright fearful.
Can I help you?
Yes, I had a quick question. So I am an independent journalist and working on a documentary and saw that you had 3 previous shared addresses with Jeffrey Epstein and wanted to get any comment you had on the matter.
You can take me off your list, okay? I have nothing to do with him, okay? Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick...
But the ones that did talk had very interesting information to pass on.
It was just so weird in there, and I was creeped out. You know, I didn't want to get caught taking pictures, but...
One of the many debaucherous behaviors of Epstein was his proclivity towards bizarre artwork. From his painting of George Bush destroying 2 toy towers with paper airplanes, to the painting of Bill Clinton in a dress, his artwork can really make you question the mainstream narratives that we've been fed. Both of these paintings were found in his New York property, but his New Mexico mansion had decor of its own. We have obtained a photo of a never-before-seen painting from Epstein's collection, one that has been withheld from the public. You are looking at a massive 6 foot by 6 foot nude painting of a young Ghislaine Maxwell. The painting shows her sprawled out on a large chair, wielding a golden dagger. She seems to be brandishing her weapon as she stares ominously back at the viewer. It was located in the underground part of the house, brazenly placed in the bathing area. You could not swim, bathe, or shower without seeing Ghislaine Maxwell fully nude, watching you. This photo came from a former contractor of Epstein, someone who worked on his ranch in the early 2000s.
Man, there was a couple of those paintings of her, and they were downstairs.
What did the other one look like?
Pretty much the same thing, but different scene, but with her legs open.
Eddie Aragon, a New Mexico local radio host and former Albuquerque mayoral candidate, has been researching Epstein's connections to the state for years now. He's spoken with several sources connected to Epstein, and today he's agreed to speak with us.
All right, let's hop to it, guys.
All right, we have the floor plan to the basement.
That's where the painting was located, and then as you go out, you see the large grotto area, which is a large bathhouse.
Among the other underground amenities was a 1,000 square foot nightclub, complete with stripper poles and hidden cameras. One anonymous source said that most activities took place there, like dancing, hanging out. It was an entertainment area. It's also been reported that employees were not allowed to go down there. They were allowed, however, in the above ground fertility room, a room dedicated to sex. Everything, including the embroidered pillows, furniture, statues, and artwork, was sex themed.
I guess you'd call it the sex room, because everything in that room was kind of like a big living room. And you've got one of the pictures, and the resolution isn't good enough to tell, but everything in that room was sex related. So the art on the walls, the embroidery on the furniture, the lamps, the little sculptures, it was all people fucking and just it was themed, definitely themed.
They likely did this to desensitize the viewer. You see, it was all an elaborate scheme, and everything was precisely placed for a strategic reason, something we'll expound upon later. Epstein's ranch was designed in such a way that everything was filmed. According to Maria Farmer, former employee and victim of Epstein, the entire estate was covered in pinhole cameras to spy on guests. Farmer also stated that the mansion had 3 house-sized computer rooms packed with surveillance equipment. She said these underground mechanical rooms, as well as tunnel systems, were in each one of Epstein's properties because he himself told her. We got our hands on the architecture plans for Epstein's New Mexico property, and while they didn't contain any signs of underground tunnels, they did corroborate the claim that the property had 3 massive mechanical rooms. The plans date back to 1998, 5 years after Epstein bought the property. They also corroborate the claim of a huge underground floor, around 8,000 square feet, which includes exercise, massage, and jacuzzi rooms.
It's a real life whorehouse, HOR or really was for the way it looks. I mean, if you were to film a bad horror movie, that would be a good place to film it. It's scary as all get out.
The setup of the bedrooms in the house was another point of strangeness. It had just 4 bedrooms, an oddly small number relative to the massive 33,000 square foot house.
Did you guys notice how well constructed those windows were? And they're like cast iron on the frames. It was very bizarre, right? It's like, why are those windows so small? And it looks very architecturally, respective of the Spanish colonial or Spanish, no, like people were imprisoned up there. They couldn't get out. Like you tried to draw up how, in a Pac-Man sort of way, how these people could get out of those. There's no way that they could have got out. There's one place up, one place down. Those bedrooms were located right above Ghislaine Maxwell's area where she worked.
On February 22nd, 1993, through his Zorro Trust, Epstein bought the land from the King family. The Kings are a notoriously powerful New Mexico agricultural and political dynasty that included then-Governor Bruce King, a name which coincidentally pops up in Epstein's Black Book. Zorro's deal included the rights to the King's leases on public lands, a total of 1,159 acres rented for $872.22 per year. It is worth noting that Epstein was already connected to the Kings, as he previously donated over $50,000 in campaign funds to the family. The King family still owns all the land surrounding Epstein's property, completely insulating it from the outside world.
That is, I can tell you this, by design.
As time went on, new people came into power, and the New Mexico state government took action. In 2019, Epstein's property agreement came to an end, as the New Mexico State Land Commissioner tore up his papers on camera.
Today, with that authority, we are officially canceling the leases with the Zorro Ranch and Sargazine.
Here's where the story gets weird. Around that same time, a mysterious deed for the property transferred Zorro Ranch to a nonprofit church in Florida named Love and Bliss for a mere $200. We did some investigating and found a phone number attached to the church. But the owner, or the head of the church, is a convicted criminal. So we're gonna call him and see what happens. Hello?
Congratulations! You've been selected for a $100 Walmart gift card. In order to process your Walmart gift card...
Obviously that was a dead end, but we dug further. The president of the church was a 22-year-old Alexander Lazinski, who was arrested in 2017 for stalking, then later for battery, then later for hiring a hitman. Upon further research, it turns out the Love and Bliss Church received nearly $200,000 in COVID relief money in 2020 and 2021. The church also filed a deed for Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. It turns out that both of these deeds were fake. In regards to the Florida deed, a judge called it invalid, and Love and Bliss was told to cease and desist. It seems as if Lazinski is just a serial criminal making an absurd play for fraud and forgery. This is just another curious detail attached to Zorro Ranch. Following Epstein's 2008 Florida conviction on child prostitution, Epstein was forced to register as a sex offender. After Epstein registered in New Mexico, state officials quickly informed him that he was not required to register in the state because the victim in his Florida case was not under 16 years old, the age of consent in the state.
Wait a minute, huh?
No, he's free to go, boys.
Epstein was taken off of the sex offender registry shortly after.
But what's really interesting is the state of New Mexico owns a piece of land that's only accessible through the rights of the private property owners, 2 former governors, a fashion designer, and of course, Jeffrey Epstein. And the person who facilitated that sale was the daughter-in-law of the former governor, Bruce King. People just sort of like looked the other way.
Epstein's relationship with the New Mexico feds didn't stop there. Upon the release of Epstein's emails in 2020, it showed that he would actually let law enforcement know whenever he was coming in or out of the state. A rather peculiar set of actions to undertake, given that they already knew Epstein was a sex criminal and took him off the registry. He was absolved from the responsibility of alerting authorities about his whereabouts, yet decided to do so anyway. No definite conclusion can be drawn from these facts alone, but they serve as interesting pieces to consider when grasping the full story and possible corruption. All this information begs the question, why? Why did one of the richest and most powerful people in the world decide to buy a ranch in the middle of nowhere? As I'm sure you've already guessed, he had a plan to go along with the ranch.
They also said that they were going to have all these people at their estate in New Mexico. And so she brings me to their estate, and they were talking about having scientists come. They were talking about what that estate was going to be. And they said it was going to be a place where they had people from the Silicon Valley. They said they were going to have people from, political organizations with political power, people from science. I remember him saying scientists would gather there because he wanted it to be a place where people could learn.
That seems to be the cover story for the real plan. He did want to gather the Western world's most prominent and powerful figures in one place, but for a different purpose. But what? And why? To answer this, first we must give context to just how deep Epstein was embedded in the scientific and academic community. Epstein was very interested in the cutting edge of science, but the type of science he was interested in was bizarre, to say the least. Epstein was willing to finance research that others viewed as unethical. He told one scientist that he was bankrolling efforts to identify a particle that could trigger the feeling that someone is watching you. One researcher who attended one of Epstein's events said that they discussed the financier's interest in cryonics, an unproven science in which people's bodies are frozen to be brought back to life in the future. Epstein apparently told this person that he wanted to freeze his head and penis. Then there was Epstein's interest in eugenics. On multiple occasions starting in the early 2000s, Epstein was outspoken about his ambitions to use his New Mexico ranch as a base where women could be inseminated with his sperm and would give birth to his babies. Once, at a dinner at Epstein's mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side, computer scientist Jaron Lanier said that he talked to someone who told him that Epstein's goal was to impregnate 20 women at a time. That someone identified herself as a NASA scientist, but he didn't remember her name. According to Lanier, the NASA scientist said Epstein had based his idea for a baby-making ranch on accounts of the Repository for Germinal Choice, a sperm bank which was to be stocked with the sperm of Nobel laureates who wanted to strengthen the human gene pool. Epstein would often use events to get close to people, such as throwing scientific conferences on his many properties. He's even quoted by an ex-girlfriend as saying, "I control everyone and everything. I collect people. I own people. I can damage people." But only a certain group of people. One often overlooked part of the Epstein-Maxwell saga is their propensity towards racism.
They made it very clear that I was a servant because I was white. I was a white servant. Yeah. It was made very clear to me No, you're just a servant. You're white.
They saw people more as cattle to be flocked than people to be cared for. Lanier said he was under the impression that Epstein was using these events, often full of young, impressionable female academics, to screen candidates worthy of bearing Epstein's children. At Epstein's 2006 academic conference on his island, one attendee recalled that Epstein wanted to talk about perfecting the human genome. Epstein said that he was fascinated with how certain traits were passed on, and how that could result in superior humans. This was somewhat ironic because we found out later that his genetics weren't superhuman at all. In fact, they were apparently well below average.
Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis? As Mr. Critton has stated, that this is a... I'm willing to continue.
We covered the connections of the scientists involved in the Zorro Ranch games, but what about the politicians? Epstein's Black Book contains the names of scientists, businessmen, as well as politicians. And if they're not in his Black Book, they're in photos, scattered around his Zorro mansion. One of our anonymous sources told us that there were photos of Epstein with famous and prominent figures such as John Travolta and Bill Clinton displayed in Zorro's common area and fertility room.
He had a lot of weird photos of him with famous people and him with very young girls and famous people with very young girls and, all sorts of stuff going on, not hardcore sex, but, there was some nudity and stuff. You go in somebody's nice house and they've got the table with all the family photos on it and collections. He had that shit, but instead of family photos, it was him and famous people and various underage women and, just weird shit like that.
It is probably not surprising to you that the Clintons have likely visited the property often. Our source claims they visited a whole bunch of times.
And then the thing is, when I figured out what was going on there and saw, him and Bill Clinton by the pool with the smoking cigars with the topless underage girls and just all the things that were going on, that's when I decided I didn't want anything to do with it. And then they really freaked me out because they called and said that they needed me to go to Little St. James because I guess they had lost their IT guy because I guess he came to the same conclusion and wanted me to go out there for a couple weeks. And I was like, I don't know, man. I was super paranoid. I was like, if I go there, I might not come back. So
even royalty is said to have frequented Zorro Ranch. Former Zorro housekeeper Deirdre Stratton told a 2019 podcast investigation of the Epstein affair that the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, had stayed in one of Zorro's lodges for 3 days. Andrew is also alleged to have spent 2 days alone at Epstein's ranch in 2001 with Epstein's former sex slave, Virginia Roberts. Stratton testified that she was given the task of looking after the two, and claimed that Andrew once asked her to bring him aphrodisiac tea to make him more horny. Along with the Duke, Roberts accused former New Mexico governor and Bill Clinton's former Secretary of Energy, Bill Richardson, of being involved in Epstein's sexual abuse ring. Maria Farmer accused Epstein and Maxwell of abusing her underage sister, Annie, at Zorro Ranch. Annie Farmer was reluctantly introduced to Epstein and Maxwell, who coerced her into visiting the ranch alone, where she says she was sexually assaulted at the age of 16. The story of how the sisters ended up at the ranch is very telling. Maria was the first victim. Epstein promised a bunch of graduates from the New York Academy of Art, including Maria, that one of them was going to get a very big commission from him for their artwork. The catch? They all had to come out to Zorro Ranch to compete for their prize. Epstein and Maxwell proceeded to play games with the female art students, games that grew increasingly more vulgar and inappropriate. This was the predatory strategy of the duo, to slowly wear down the morality of their targets by promising them a big reward on the other side of their sick games.
She told us to flirt with Jeffrey. And she played a game, a really creative game, where we had to pull falsies out of a bag.
But the games usually didn't end in prizes. Rather, human trafficking and sex slavery. Later, Annie was also invited to the ranch, under the impression that it was a student event, similar to Maria's story. However, when Annie arrived at Zorro Ranch, she discovered that she was the only attendee, alone with Epstein and Maxwell. According to the human trafficking courts in New Mexico, 267 human trafficking victims were identified in 2021.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load. Again, children who have no documentation. It's not just child slavery or child sex abuse.
This is former CIA spy Robert David Steele.
It's also child torture because you have adrenalized blood. You have the whole blood drinking ceremony of the satanic world.
Now ask yourself, who would be powerful enough to conduct such a calculated and coordinated operation?
In the United States of America, the acknowledged number, not counting the children being bred without birth certificates, not counting the children being imported without documentation, is between 600 and 800,000 a year. Now imagine Africa and East Asia and all these other locations. I personally believe that the number we want to try to document is rising well beyond the official figures, and we have yet to learn what the actual number is.
Let's consider Steele's assertion for a second. Is it truly possible that there is a network of tunnels underneath our feet that the elite use for human trafficking? Now remember, Maria Farmer said that Epstein had tunnels in all of his residences because he himself told her. Let's go back to his infamous island for a second. The Daily Mail reported that $100,000 worth of cement was rushed to his house just weeks before his arrest. He was also on the advisory board of Lifeboat Foundation, a company specializing in safeguarding humanity, which hosts programs such as Life Shield bunkers.
Hello.
Hi, is this Lifeboat Foundation?
Yes.
Which are massive, house-sized, underground living spaces.
No, we don't have any actual bunkers. It was just an idea by one of our board members. So we have like one page devoted to it on our site. It's not even like a primary goal of our organization. Our primary goal is to protect humanity against existential risks, and any real serious risk, any bunker on Earth would be insufficient to protect you against it.
Oh, I also see that it looks like Jeffrey Epstein was on the board here. Did he have some kind of...
No, he's not.
Oh, okay. Maybe is that old or something?
Yeah, so again, if you look at our bunker page, it's just a few paragraphs. I don't want to make a big deal out of it.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Not trying to make a big deal out of it here. Just was looking on your website and saw it. That is interesting, though. Did he get some kind of bunker set up on like his island or anything?
No, that's not correct.
What was it? What was he doing on this? I just want to make sure we don't get in some hot water here. Did he have some kind of...
He really didn't do anything.
Did he just donate money or something? Or what's the...
No, he didn't even do that.
Oh, well, what did he do?
Nothing.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, thank you for the help. We'll go ahead and...
So we didn't even get $1.
There is still more information to learn about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, who all was involved, and where it all took place. The deeper you go down the rabbit hole, the more questions seem to appear. This is just a glimpse into a world we were never supposed to know existed. When looking at this whole picture from a bird's eye view, it is easy to get discouraged, dissuaded, or downright scared at the amount of evil operating at scale right now. When researching the story, Carter and I wondered if bringing this information to light would even help the cause. But let's not forget, Epstein is dead, Ghislaine is behind bars, and there's a court case in the Virgin Islands right now that has the opportunity to blow things wide open. All we can bet on is knowing the truth and sharing the truth, because after all, it is the truth that shall set us free.
Follow us to stay updated on any information we receive through our Freedom of Information Act requests. And if you have any information that you deem credible, please email reveloproject@proton.me.
We look forward to documenting Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar project, as well as the investigation going on right now in the Virgin Islands.
If you want to see more documentaries like this one in the future, feel free to donate to our PayPal. The link is in the description.
Donations make content like this possible. Thanks for watching. That was it.
It's a wrap. All right.